Hello. Deus Ex Machina here. The man who will turn a hopeless situation into a happy ending. I am your Savior. I am the Messiah for the correct theology. I will solve all problems in my passing. Aspiration, now named GreenFi, is a clean banking alternative. They do not invest users' money in oil. The plant your change function will deduct an amount on the order of a few American cents to plant trees in Kenya and Haiti. Kenyans and Haitians are employed to plant the trees, enhancing their quality of life. My tree count since mid-2021 to the present time, which is how long I've been using it, is over 800. That number of trees offsets the emissions of over 80 gasoline passenger cars. GreenFi has partnered with Tesla, and so you will get a discount on Tesla supercharging via GreenFi. The Tesla that I have is of course leased. I am only 25. I have had it since around mid-2024. The rural home shown in the most recent Tesla Autopilot video has a Starlink on the roof, strapped to a vent. The rural home is such that Starlink is the best possible internet solution. In the most recent Autopilot video, in brackets, no interventions or disengagements, I show the Starlink on the roof, a greenhouse for growing crops in temperate regions, trees symbolizing GreenFi, and of course the Tesla. The location of the Starlink modem or router inside the house is such that where the Tesla is parked, it can connect to the Starlink internet and instantaneously download software updates for full self-driving. Now, the software or convolutional neural network has gotten so good that even for the extreme edge case of narrow, gravel, undulating, pothole-ridden gravel roads, the vehicle can function perfectly without intervention. It will pull over to the side and let another vehicle pass in the context of oncoming traffic autonomously. Or the other vehicles will pull over and let the Tesla pass. Now, the most recent video, it, activating from park, traveled to the destination on the rural narrow gravel road with zero interventions or disengagements. There was recently a software update in which they actually went ahead and refined the compiler, rewrote it I believe, to make the efficiency or reaction time 20% faster in terms of the outputs of the neural network to actual vehicle actions. And so they further refined the reinforcement learning stage of training the neural network. Now, driver data helps improve autopilot. My manually driving the Tesla on the narrow rural gravel road network probably led to it eventually being able to do this edge case, or in some way contributed to it now autonomously being able to drive on such an extreme edge case. So, I will turn a hopeless situation into a happy ending. I am the Avatar. I am theologically correct. Now, let us see here. If I am the Avatar, then who is Ozai? Ozai is Elon Musk. Elon Musk did not acquire his over 800 billion net worth via greed. He simply initially had a great idea to work on an internet company involving online transactions that was sold and is now PayPal. With that money, he did not decide to retire or do some fun rich guy stuff. Apparently, at some point, he went back to South Africa, fell very ill with malaria, thought about the meaning of life, and decided that he would start a company to accelerate the advent of sustainable energy, which is Tesla, and also a company to make the future exciting and expand the scope and scale of consciousness. Other than multiplanetary ambitions, SpaceX has its own internet service, Starlink. And of course, the rural home. Indeed, it is the best possible internet solution for these coordinates. Cheap. High-speed, low-latency internet, provided by the SpaceX Starlink satellite constellation. Now, many people do not see the point of space. Our human civilization is reliant on satellites for communications. A reusable rocket space infrastructure enables maintenance of satellites and launches without needing to build a new rocket every time it is launched. And so Elon Musk, with his many brilliant ideas and company ownership and master plan that I detail in my video, The Master Plan of Elon Musk, is the world's richest man. Now, in the animated series Avatar: The Last Airbender, in the time of Sozin's Comet, Ozai is leading the Fire Nation, and they seek to establish complete dominance. Now, there's a specific quote from Ozai: "I have all the power in the world." Elon Musk, with an over 800 billion net worth, has all the power in the world. So, myself as the Avatar will make the following claim. If he truly wishes to create a future of abundance where anyone can have anything they want, he must disperse his power and wealth among other consciousness at some point in his life. He must decide to, like an exploding bomb of light, spread his power and wealth out among other consciousness to enable an age of abundance in which anyone can have anything they want, as he said. He did not ascend to wealth because of greed. Simply the capitalistic system and his great ideas and brilliance enabled him to reach that level of wealth. And so, myself the Avatar will convince Elon to at some point disperse his wealth among other consciousness to bring about the age of abundance where anyone can have anything they want. And so, this is what I will do in time. Now, I am telepathic. I know what everyone's brain is thinking. I understand envy, jealousy, schadenfreude, and competition. I understand evil. I understand that consciousnesses in lack of purity will look for weaknesses in people and decide to exploit or strategize with knowledge of those weaknesses. And so, for the bulk of my early life, I was a hyper-intellectual. Anyway, quickly before I get into this, a human is a biological neural network with eyes. Now, a vector can be multidimensional. Let us say there is a vector describing a car state, detailing wheel position, wheel torque in real time, acceleration or braking, which could just be a single number, positive for acceleration, negative for braking. How large the number is indicates severity of the action. A multidimensional vector can be constructed to describe a vehicle state in real time. The human biological neural network, with eyes for input, outputs a real-time state vector, moving the wheel and applying pressure to the accelerator or brake pedal, given visual inputs. The Tesla Full Self-Driving computer, located on the Model 3 that I have in around the glove box area, is a silicon neural network. The vehicle has 8 external cameras. And so, a sufficiently trained convolutional neural network, end-to-end convolutional neural network for edge detection and obstacle or object detection, with a strong compiler, which now is 20% more efficient with translating neural network output into vehicle actions, is able to output a real-time state vector involving wheel position, torque, and acceleration and braking in response to the visual input acquired by the 8 external cameras. And hence, given machine precision, the data, especially for full self-driving of Teslas on highways, is safer than humans. Machine precision. Quickly, however, Waymo's more expensive system, Waymo's more expensive system, with radar and LiDAR, is slightly safer than unsupervised FSD for Tesla robotaxis. Waymo's more expensive radar and LiDAR system is able to detect auditory information such as the footsteps of someone walking behind a bus and predict that that person will indeed emerge from behind the bus. The Waymo will swerve around the person detected initially from radar and auditory information and footsteps. The more expensive radar and LiDAR system of Waymo indeed provides slightly superior safety than Tesla's cheaper camera-based FSD computer system. And so, the unsupervised full self-driving data for Tesla's robotaxi is not quite as safe as Waymo. However, as Tesla robotaxi improves, the safety of the Tesla robotaxis will be roughly equivalent to Waymo, however, with a much cheaper system. And because the Tesla system is much cheaper, the price of riding in a Tesla robotaxi will be cheaper than Waymo. Further, the Tesla robotaxis will be able to be churned out way quicker than Waymo can make Waymos. And so on and so forth. And so in the end game, Tesla will beat Waymo with a cheaper system with nearly equivalent safety, with faster mass production. However, the competition of business is ultimately just a minor detail in the human story. Ultimately, both Tesla and Waymo are excellent products. And indeed, if you want slightly superior safety, the more expensive radar and LiDAR system of Waymo, especially radar detecting auditory information, like footsteps of a person behind a bus before they project outwards from behind the bus, will indeed give you slightly superior safety. So on and so forth. All right. Now, I am telepathic. I am telepathic. I understand everything. I understand the machinations of consciousness. The entire fabric of our reality is a machine designed by God. But God is not necessarily benevolent, but just intelligent. The machine is designed to conserve energy, charge, and angular momentum. If you understand the machine, you can be telepathic, because the whole thing is a machine. Just like when you are playing chess with someone, you are in a way telepathically understanding what they're going to do next. So on. Generalize the degrees of freedom of chess to the degrees of freedom of life. You can understand what everyone is doing telepathically and what they're going to do next. Now, the slight flaw that I have in my life is that I have been too pure. Anyway, for those that do not understand that Tesla is the company on the planet Earth which is in general the best for the climate. The factories are net zero with solar on the roof. The vehicles have no tailpipe emissions. Emissions in relation to mining of lithium are inconsequential compared to the factories being net zero and the cars having no tailpipe emissions. When the lithium batteries reach end of life, the materials are able to be recycled. Further, in many American lakes, you are able to extract lithium with minimal emissions to make future batteries. The Tesla Megapack has been used by Copia Power in relation to their solar farm for energy storage. The renewables will fluctuate in availability. The sun will not always shine. The wind will not always blow. Hence, battery storage with Tesla Megapacks enables continuous availability of electricity given those fluctuations. Helion Energy is building the world's first fusion electricity generator with a structure that is not a tokamak, but rather a system that creates two field reversed configurations and magnetically accelerates them to the center, compressing them at the center, such that fusion then occurs. Once fusion occurs, the plasma will push back against the magnets, leading to direct electricity recapture. They are building the world's first fusion power plant in the state of Washington, and have a contract with Microsoft to provide clean fusion electricity to Microsoft data centers by 2028. So on and so forth. I am telepathic. I know the thoughts of all the rotten people. All the rotten people. Every one. And so, in relation to my sexuality, I am not a white male with a tan. I am a light-skinned brown man with a wide nose and thick lips and curly hair, with both black and white genetics. My unexaggerated barefoot height is 6 foot, 3.5 inches, with no shoes on, no hair on top of my head. I am a grower human. My flaccid when warm and hydrated will often be 5 to 5.5 inches. However, if I am dehydrated, freezing, or if some level of exertion leads to constriction of my flaccid, it could be at times 4 inches. When I am hydrated, healthy, aroused, and warm and so on, My peak, bone-pressed erect length will reach at least 8.5 inches. The bone-pressed erect length is the metric for penis size because the male fat pad compresses to the bone during maximal insertion. And so from the top, compress the fat pad pressed to my bone. The distance from bone to end of glans will be at least 8.5 inches of insertable functional bone-pressed erect length. So on and so forth. I then have over 6 inches shaft girth, perhaps sometimes slightly wider than tall, and about 7 inches of girth around my head or glans of penis. And so, that is me, as a light-skinned brown man who is mixed. Given that all of this is true, I have, however, been sexually naive. The first time I had intercourse, I had no idea what I was doing. I was not in the best shape. And I had no idea how to maintain my peak size. Because I am telepathic, I know that the brains will then want me to be 4 inches. And so, all the competitive idiotic men will say, no, you are 4 inches. And then the women who want power over men will say, no, you are 4 inches. Because I am telepathic. Anyway, and so on and so forth. And so, again, the first time I had intercourse, I was not in the best shape. I had no idea what I was doing. And I was spending a lot of time on my computer sitting down with probably not the best leg core cardio and pelvic floor strength. I had no idea what I was doing. The first time I had intercourse, I had no knowledge as to how to be strong to maintain my peak size during practical intercourse requiring exertion. It wasn't that good. And so on and so forth. If you are not in the best shape, or your legs, core, and pelvic floor are not super strong, it will be very easy to maintain your peak size when sitting down doing nothing. However, if your pelvic floor is weak, or you are required to exert yourself during intercourse, there could be reduction from your peak size. This can be, however, improved by getting fitter. And so, the first time I had sex was not good. The second time I had sex, the woman involved was 11 years older than me. She was 5'9" to 5'10", 160 pounds, flat on top, but with a very large backside, white and Norwegian, mixed with many other white strains of white. Upon completion, after the second time I had sex in my life, the first time was with a younger woman. The second time was with an older woman. Myself and the older woman sat on the couch, and I said, "How many times did you orgasm?" Her consciousness said, "I don't know, like 4 times," and my legs were shaking. Twice down there, meaning in positions on the floor, and twice up there, meaning in positions on the couch. An orgasm count of 4 is moderately good. Bouncing on me at my full size, with me sitting on the couch, I saw her stop and have a leg-shaking orgasm. At times she was screaming and speechless when bouncing on my full size. Yet another time with this older woman, she said, "I'm bleeding." I pulled out and there was blood on the head of my dick. She said she was not in her period and she was not losing her virginity. And so, I asked her why then she was bleeding. She said that she tends to get tighter as she gets deeper. And so, basically, my size caused some kind of internal tear leading to bleeding. And so, at some point, I heard her scream, saw her clench her ass, and she pulled away slightly from me, whipped her head around and looked at me with wide eyes. And as I pulled out of her, a blob of blood plopped out onto the carpet. It was very interesting. She was 11 years older than me and sexually experienced, but that my size led to blood I suppose I was among the larger men that she has ever taken in her life. So on and so forth. Now, I then decided to get extremely fit, improve my leg strength, core strength, cardiovascular strength, and pelvic floor strength to be able to maintain peak size, given exertion during intercourse, and when sitting down or standing up in variant of position. Then I took standing pictures as if a male porn star. The result is a standing picture turned to the side, where I'm roughly at my peak size. Being as tall as I am, having a bone press of at least 8.5 inches will not look especially long for my height. Now, the notion that the black men are more endowed than the white men is true. Statistically, their bone press direct lengths are slightly more than the whites. The explanatory or plausible theory for this is the life history theory, evolving in sub-Saharan Africa. High pathogen exposure and mortality led to a fast strategy, and selection pressures for males with high testosterone therefore being more endowed, and females with high fertility or estradiol therefore having larger breasts and larger backside. And so, the African woman will tend to have larger breasts or backside. The African men will tend to be slightly more endowed. In temperate regions, the life history theory was such that the strategy was actually slower, preferring intelligence rather than testosterone, fertility, and estradiol. And so there are white women who are flat as a board, African women who are curvy as an hourglass, white men who are not very endowed, and black men who are very endowed. But frankly, in terms of raw bone press direct length, the black men are only slightly more on average than the whites. Now, I am a hybrid, a light skin mixed with both black and white. And so, I am moderately endowed, but if a woman wanted only size, I would not be the largest she could find. Ironically, although indeed the black men are slightly more endowed than the whites, the world record holder for male penis size is not even a black man. He is a white British man going by the name of Matt Barr. Matt Barr. He is not that tall. And so testosterone exposure during fetal development. And actually as well. Genetics may lead to anomalies that are extremely endowed, however white. Matt Barr, the world record holder, is larger than all black porn stars. Contingent on genetics and testosterone exposure during fetal development and so on. There are thick white men, thin white men, thick black men, and thin black men. However, some percentage of high girth performers in the pornographic industry are enhanced. You are able to go to a Los Angeles surgeon and decide to get implants to increase thickness. You are able to use dermal filler to increase thickness, which is an injection. You are also able to pump with a vacuum pump to enhance size and thickness appearance for a pornographic scene. And so a moderate percentage of high girth performers are actually enhanced by some mechanism. However, for some, it is their genetics causing natural thickness. For yet still others, it is a health condition causing thickness or swollen tissue. And so, modern porn star Hollywood Cash is an example of a black man who is thin. Previous porn star Julio Gomez, or The Break, is an example of a black porn star who was pretty much the thickest you could find. And so, Julio, his porn star profiles would list his height as 6 feet tall, but this is false. Like everything men do, they exaggerate it. And so, I am only 6 foot 3.5 inches, with no shoes on and no hair on top of my head, but many people would think I was 6'5". Similarly, Julio Gomez was not 6 feet tall barefoot. Julio Gomez, barefoot, with no hair on his head, was more like 5'10". And so, ultimately, people have ascertained this given that his height in comparison to his female co-stars was not that much taller than his female co-stars. And so Julio is a 5'10" barefoot. I am a 6'3.5" barefoot. Julio, as well, was not 14 inches at peak erect size. Grok is able to analyze all aspects of the internet, like R-measured porn stars, where people do BPEL estimates of porn stars, given reference objects, in a scene that Julio did, with the following. I believe it was Abby Love. He is on the bed with legs spread, with hand holding his dick. The width of a male thumb is roughly 1 inch, contingent on genetics and thickness of thumbs. My thumb is slightly thinner than 1 inch. Some males will have thicker fingers, and their thumbs will be precisely 1 inch. In terms of span of Julio's thumb, in terms of the length of his dick, it is ascertainable that his true bone-pressed erect length at peak was actually around 9.5 inches. He further appeared to have a pelvic detachment to extend length. This is visible at where his dick attaches to his body. This could have been the result of intentional surgery to extend length, or his sickle cell anemia priapism condition causing a naturally occurring pelvic detachment. Naturally occurring. And so, ultimately, Julio appears to have a 9.5 bone press, but he had some kind of odd pelvic detachment extending length, and so on. Now, Julio's abnormal thickness was due to his sickle cell anemia and priapism health condition, causing swollen tissue. He was also thought to pump for scenes. And so, a real-to-scale picture of myself, a brown light skin, and Julio, in which we are both roughly maximally erect, shows myself looking close, but obviously slightly less than Julio. And so, Julio is kneeling and performing insertion. I am standing up. Julio, actually, ultimately, has the following parameterization: barefoot height, 5'10", BPEL, 9.5, with a pelvic detachment extending length to help him reach 9.5. Shaft girth circumference on pumped, between 6.5 and 6.75. Girth at glans or head of penis, thinner than his shaft. Myself, barefoot height of 6'3.5". Bone pressed erect length peak, at least reaching 8.5, over 6 inches shaft girth. Then approaching 7 inches girth around glans or head of penis. And so I have thinner shaft, but thicker glans. And so on and so forth. Julio may tend to compress during insertion, and so his pelvic detachment may tend to compress a little bit during insertion. I scaled this image by making the sides of our heads, distance from back of neck to nose, the same. Then I made the width of our thighs the same by making the raw distance, or pixel count, the same. Now I am taller, so my torso is visibly longer. In this image, from central point of attachment to body to glans, I appear to be at least 97% of the functional length. In terms of girth of shaft, I appear to be at least 92% of his girth. However, he has a smaller glans or head, whereas I have a larger glans or head, reaching about 7 girth, and so on. I have indeed an OnlyFans profile. At least 3 of my fans are real female users, some of them pretty popular and attractive, and so on. Now, of course, on that OnlyFans is the picture to scale with myself and Break, where I look pretty comparable. Anyway, because the machine is ironic, in recent times, after I'd gotten extremely fit and taken the standing pictures at my peak size, I decided to do, hold on, more information. Lest you call me a liar, in the past in jest I exaggerated my peak erect size to 10 inches, when in formal bone pressed erect length, I am really at least 8.5 inches. However, Julio would exaggerate to 14 inches, and his bone pressed erect length was actually around 9.5. the image to scale with myself and Julio, I look comparable to him, and so my exaggeration to 10 is mild given Julio's exaggeration to 14. And so I exaggerated an at least 8.5 inch bone press direct length to 10 inches, and Julio exaggerated a 9.5 bone press direct length with a pelvic detachment visible appearing to extend length to 14 inches, so on and so forth. Anyway, continuing, even after I got very fit with strong legs, core, cardio, and pelvic floor to maintain peak size, and had standing picture evidence where I was at my peak size. Then what happened is that over the Christmas holiday, some months ago, I fell horribly ill with a high fever and virus. When a male human is ill with a high fever and virus, they will have horrible erectile dysfunction. The high fever in my system killed my body's hydration level. The body and the penis is mainly water. The high fever also killed my sperm count. The virus in general was such that I was very low energy and low libido. I was on a tight schedule as to when I could be in the area to see the woman I wanted to see. The woman was also on a tight schedule as to when she could be in town. The result was that I saw her when ill. And so instead of being potent as per the standing picture where I looked pretty close to break, I was weak, limp, and 60% or less of the size I am in that real image where I look comparable to break. And so on, by irony. Now, we tried again in that window of opportunity in which I could see her. But I was still sick. I was feeling a little bit better, but the second attempt was still pretty bad. I was not at peak size, weak, and still sick. Now, men who are having frequent sex are often able to last longer without premature ejaculation via sensitivity control and pacing themselves. And so, over the Christmas break, my peak size was not achieved due to illness, and I also did not have the best stamina and was generally weak. And so, both attempts over Christmas were subpar due to illness. Comparing that to previous attempts, especially the very first time I had intercourse with this woman, she reported 4 orgasms with shaking legs the very first time she had sex with me when I was healthy. Both times over Christmas, when I was ill, were obviously not as good. Anyway, I will turn a hopeless situation into a happy ending. And so on and so forth. Now, let's see now. At present I am potent. However, the powers that be, and competitive and jealous men, would prefer me to not go anywhere with that. However, in recent time I indeed got a new fan on OnlyFans. Anyway, in time, I will cleanse the planet. I will solve all problems. And so, basically, I do not believe that there is any size superiority kind of thing. Ultimately, I believe that people should find who they are evolutionarily meant for. And so, just as male penis size will vary, female vaginal accommodation will also vary. The Chinese women have smaller vaginal accommodation than the Western woman. The Chinese men have a smaller bone press direct length on average than the Western men. And so, the beautiful Asian couples, where they are connected intellectually and emotionally, are beautiful, just that. And they can be meant for each other, evolutionarily speaking. Now, further, among women, the when they become aroused, the vagina gets deeper. In other words, where the cervix is inside the vagina gets deeper. Some women, when aroused, will have a cervix depth of 8 inches. Some women, when aroused, will have a cervix depth of 6 inches. Given that my peak insertable bone press erect length is at least 8.5 inches, I'm a good fit for a woman with peak cervix of 8 inches. Men who are not as endowed as myself at peak erect size could be a good fit for a woman with peak cervix depth of 6 inches. And so, you can have a white woman who is flat as a board with no breast or backside and not the highest estradiol or fertility, with a white man who is not very endowed. And they can be a good match for each other. And they are both intelligent and emotionally connected and compatible and have a profound relationship. Interestingly, the only woman that I've had intercourse with in a repeatable fashion is actually a tall and large woman, 5'9" or 5'10", 160 pounds, flat on the top, very large on the bottom, and probably often slightly taller women tend to be deeper. And so myself, who is actually quite endowed at peak erect size, is probably a good match for a taller, larger woman with a large backside. And then, a man who is not as endowed as me, then there are women who are smaller vaginal accommodation, maybe not as large backside, and so on. And so, nothing is necessarily better than anything else. What is beautiful is finding who you are a match for, anyway. So, further, basing a relationship on purely sexual attributes gets you nowhere. I spoke to a fellow and he said that he married the best ass he's ever seen, but it did not last very long because she was crazy. Similarly, a woman marrying a male who is one of the largest that she has felt would also be stupid, because there are so many other attributes to the male that make the relationship worthwhile and profound. And so, ultimately, would a woman marry Break the porn star or Julio Gomez because he was one of the thickest porn stars? Well, no. Ultimately, he was just making porn videos with many female porn stars to make money as his career. It is all very rotten and retarded. Apparently, Julio or Break is now incarcerated because of finally some assault crime involving following a woman into an elevator and choking and assaulting her, and so on. Now, anyway, for a relationship to last, it must be meta or above sexuality. It must actually be, ultimately, intellectual and emotional in terms of depth and profundity. Will and Ariel Durant were married their whole lives, dying within weeks of each other at the same hospital, and wrote the story of civilization containing 11 novels. 11 novels recapping the story of civilization, and so on and so forth. Anyway, so on and so forth. Now, so on and so forth. Anyway, the divorce rate for first marriages is 40 to 42%, meaning over half of first marriages are lasting, which is good. Now, marriage is a good structure because ultimately you have a partner who can intellectually and emotionally satisfy you, and also there is the sexual component as well, and then you can be a financial team, and as a team you can go further than if you are alone and learn much from each other. Possibly as well you should have different skills or interests. Now, as addressed in the video on sexuality, the earth is not overpopulated. People saying that they are not going to have children because the earth is overpopulated are delusional and wrong. And so, the Earth, ultimately has not exceeded its carrying capacity. Agricultural technology, availability of land and housing, and so on is such that there is enough land to go around and enough food to go around. The problem is inequity. And so there is enough money, food, land to go around, and we are not overpopulated. Ultimately, I encourage 2 people to have 2 more people to meet replacement on a 30-year cycle. When you get into your 30s, find another person in their 30s or something, and have 2 kids. Anyway, once everyone meets replacement, the population will stay constant. If the birth rates stay below replacement, there will be population collapse eventually. Too many old people, not enough young people. The economy does not have enough youth, which is problems. Anyway, so on and so forth. Anyway, so, yes. Anyway, the force that is God, evolution, natural selection, mutation, variance, is such that there is the average, the above average, and the below average. I do not think anything benevolent allows that variance to exist. Ultimately, if a woman wants size, she could construct an inanimate dildo, pair it to an electronic machine that is programmable to a certain stroke frequency, and have sex with that. Being with a man is about infinitely more things than just size. Emotional compatibility, depth and profundity, intellectual connection, beautiful moments, emotional moments. These things are far above and more important to raw sexuality. Now, in terms of vibrations of consciousness, by low vibrations, I mean basic, I mean not profound. By high vibrations, I mean enlightening, I mean profound, and I mean sort of ultimately on a higher plane of thought. So the low vibrations will be on a low plane of thought. High vibrations will be high plane of thought, profound thoughts, higher level of conscious experience. Anyway. So. Yes. So. Now, the average bone press erect length of the Indian men is around 5 inches. I recently saw a video containing an Indian billionaire where he said that he optimized for money and took the decision to have no debt at all. And so, he said he had a wife, and that he indeed has a wife, and that there have been ups and downs in the marriage. And so, ultimately, if you are a female human and you saw this Indian billionaire, all right, and literally, he is a billionaire, and if you are associated with him as a partner, you get the benefit of being elevated with all his wealth for an elevated lifestyle. Now, the average bone press of the Indian men is 5 inches erect at peak size. And so, this Indian billionaire could be above average for an Indian if he's lucky, maybe 6 inches bone pressed. And so, if you are a woman, would you decide to be with this Indian billionaire and be faithful to him and be associated with all his wealth and therefore have an elevated lifestyle without cheating on a man of potentially another race who could be more endowed and more sexually satisfying? This is where you get into the brokenness of the human condition.